So I'm going to divulge something that I reckon some of you guys are going to judge me about, but I'm going to do it anyway. But before we do, I just think we need to set the record straight, have a bit of balance. Some of the things, CV items. I'm a professor of law. I'm a former Rhodes Scholar. I've written over, 40 peer-reviewed papers, co-edited or authored 3 books. The list goes on. There's a brain. But then, there's my dirty secret, which is I like to binge on Netflix shows. And, my husband and I do this. Almost every evening we'll get together at the end of it and sit down and eat ice cream and watch, shows like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul. We love these sorts of shows. But even he draws the line at the types of shows I like to binge on Netflix. Now, they are just utter trash. There's no word for them. They're not sexually explicit or graphic in particular. They're just junk. You literally lose brain cells as you're watching them. One of those shows is Ginny and Georgia. Now, I know probably you're clicking unsubscribe right at this moment, but Ginny and Georgia has been one of my favourite shows, even though, she's a murderer. The mum is, she's murdered her previous husbands, but, there's sort of good reason for it in the show, but murder's never justified. She's got a son, a daughter. The daughter's at high school. There's all of those themes that I kind of feel attracted to. I'm kind of interested in it. But she's a terrible mother, but then she's also a good mother. She's also sleeping with the mayor, but then there's the guy at the cafe who, serves her coffee and they've got something. It is just honestly like a show that you would never let your children watch. And in fact, if they come into my room, because they're meant to be asleep, but they come in because they've had like a bad dream or something. It's one of those shows that you just like quickly hit the pause button as quickly as you can because you just don't want them to even hear a sentence of it. So anyway, I know you're all thinking worse of me now, but I just need to power on with the episode because I've committed to it. And today on the Dr. Joe Show, we're going to talk about the most recent season, episode 7, where the topic of abortion comes up. Before we get into today's episode, could I please ask that if you're new here, you hit the subscribe button. The more people that subscribe to this channel, the more people, our movement grows. So let me get you up to speed really quickly on this trashy show that I like to binge on. So Georgia is under house arrest because all the stuff that she's done, all the bad stuff has sort of finally come down on her and she is on trial for murder. So she's under house arrest. You can only see her children under, limited supervised visits. The children, her son and her daughter, are living with their respective dads. And so this particular episode breaks open with Ginny wanting to tell her mum that she is pregnant. Let's watch.
No.
Mom.
Ginny. No. You're pregnant.
Yeah. Mom.
It's okay. Of course it's okay.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I know. Shh. You're pregnant.
So it's not the news that any mum wants to hear. And at this point in the episode, you really don't know which way it's going to go. Ginny's clearly in a lot of pain. She's devastated by the fact that she's pregnant. She's really scared. What's really clear here is that she's just a little girl. She might be 16 years old in this episode, but she is like the little girl who at 4 years old has, hurt her finger and needs mum to give her a cuddle. Like that's, you just see that vulnerability there. And Georgia, the mother, whatever you might think of her, and you probably should be thinking quite a lot because she's not an exemplary mother in many ways. She does love her children. That does come out in all of the seasons, and I respect her for that. Like she really does want the best for them, is the way that she's portrayed. And in this moment, at this very moment before we proceed, she does all the right things. She gives Ginny the space to be able to say it so that, the conversation is had. Because I reckon in many cases this would go down with a young girl wanting to tell her mum that she's pregnant, but the space not being there and the moment passing and the girl just going and dealing with it herself. And so I think it's really awesome that she tells her mum and her mum embraces her and gives her a hug and says it's going to be okay, because that's just the reality of life. We face tremendous pain, suffering and agony sometimes, but actually with the community of people around us who love us, we can get through anything. I think that's true. That's the nature and the resilience of the human condition. And so it's really nice to see Georgia hug Ginny and to give her that reassurance. Let's watch what happens next.
Oh, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
Honey, I can't tell you what to do.
But you always tell me what to do.
Yeah, but not this.
Now you have a boundary?
Peach, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and your brother. I don't regret having you for 1 second. You're my air. You're my purpose. I don't know who I am without you. But you changed my life. My life became about you. And that was okay. That was good for me, but you're different. You have so much to look forward to, so much life to live, and I want you to have the best life. The very best life. And a baby that is sacrificed, that's just truth. So it's not my life, baby. I made my decision. Only you can make this one. What do you want to do? Do you want to have this baby?
So this is heartbreaking because Ginny's going to her mum looking for her to tell her what to do. And Georgia refuses to. And Ginny rightfully says, you know, this is the time you're just going to abandon me. This is the moment, because Ginny is like pleading with her mum. She needs something. She needs direction. And it's almost like the tragedy of this is it just exposes the hollowness of the woke pro-abortion narrative, you know, which is like, I chose to have my babies. It was the worst circumstances imaginable, because if you watch the other seasons, you can see that Georgia has been through an awful lot. And she chose to have her babies against all of the odds. And, you know, she says to Ginny, you know, I love you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. But, you know, look at your life. You've got so much ahead of you. And it's almost like she's funneling her into abortion, isn't it? Like you sort of, that's what you feel, because she's not giving her the alternative. She's not sort of saying, well, okay, you are a very promising creative writing student at school. You're in the running to be the poet laureate for the state. You've got a lot ahead of you that you could do with your life, and you are pregnant now. And so how would we do schooling, and how could I support you? How could your dreams still be fulfilled if you had this baby and I supported you to have this baby? Like, they're not looking at any of it. It's just this very emotional interaction where the mum refuses to be a mother. You know, part of the obligation of being a parent is to guide your children and to steer them away from error, to steer them away from grave moral wrongs. And at the same time as Georgia's saying, you know, you were the best thing that ever happened to me, she is saying to Ginny, and now you should probably kill your child. And she doesn't say it directly because she's using that woke language of it's up to you, it's your choice. But in her failure to offer meaningful support and resources and to show how this could work, she is effectively funneling Ginny to the abortion. She's effectively marching her to that abortion clinic herself. Ginny says to her incredulously, but you always tell me what to do. And George is hiding behind the pro-abortion narrative, which is it's your body, it's your choice. Like, all of a sudden, as if in this moment, Ginny stops being her daughter. You know, there's this brain virus that just consumes the pro-abortion side, which says you can never tell a woman what to do. And here is Ginny as a daughter pleading with her mum for advice. And the mum refuses. And, you know, the majority of women say that if they knew they had more support, they would have carried their child to birth. And so this is a study by a pro-choice New Zealand academic, David Reardon, and others on his team, Catherine Rafferty, Tessa Longbones, and they're using Turnaway study data, which is actually a study that's funded by the abortion industry. And that study even says that 60% of women reported that they would have carried the child to term if they'd had more support or financial stability. And, you know, this is not a circumstance where Ginny is homeless. They live in a beautiful home, and yes, her mum is in jail. Yes, her mum's on trial for murder, and that you know, that's probably not normal in most of these circumstances. But in most of these teenage pregnancies, you've got situations where you've got a loving family around you, and yet these girls are funneled into abortion because it's seen as this quick fix, and that's what's happening to Ginny here.
You want to take a night? Think about this.
No, I'm sure. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Hi there, I'd like to make an appointment. I'm pregnant and I'd like not to be. Virginia Miller. This afternoon? Perfect. Thank you. Peach, bring someone with you.
That's wild.
Not him. Anyone. Your dad. Can we tell your dad? Maxine, don't go alone. Please. I'm begging you.
No, I don't want anyone to go with me. I'll be fine. I can do this. I'm strong, Mom. I've had to get really strong.
So what's striking here is just how quickly the decision is made to kill Ginny's child and George's grandchild. You know, it's just a matter of moments in which they have this conversation and the decision is made. At this point, you know, they don't even know what the abortion method is. Ginny doesn't even know that this is a first trimester abortion and there's one of two methods that could be used. The first involves her taking pills where the first pill literally starves her baby to death and the second pill expels the baby's body from her, and so she could literally deliver on the bathroom floor and come face to face with her baby. The second method is much quicker and has less risks to it, but it's equally brutal. It's a suction abortion where the baby's limbs and whole body is dismembered violently by this suction and removed piece by piece. So, you know, either way, it's really gross, but there's none of that, no discussion about that. She's clearly not aware of it. She doesn't know how this ends. And in fact, neither of them even use the word abortion once or termination of pregnancy. You know, there's just none of that discussion. You know, when Ginny's mum, Georgia, calls the abortion clinic, she says, you know, I'm pregnant and I don't want to be, you know, and there's no actual focus on what's happening. It's euphemistic language all over again. It's just disappearing the pregnancy or ending the pregnancy when every abortion kills a human being. You know, the show takes for granted the reason that Ginny is having the abortion is justified. You know, she's 16, she's still in school, her mum is on trial for murder, she hardly knows the father. But Ginny never actually explains her reason. And there's this subtext all the way through that whatever reason a woman has, whatever choice she makes, well, that's the right choice. And that we can never judge her for it, and that it's the moral choice because it's the choice that she made. And when Georgia asks her, you know, do you want a night to think this over? The tragedy is Ginny just says, no, I'm sure, I'm done, I know. And, you know, it's almost like Georgia, the mother's in two minds, because on the one hand, she's funneling Ginny into this abortion, but then she says, you know, do you want a night to think it over? And then she says, you know, take someone with you. And you can see in her eyes, she's pleading with Ginny to take someone with her because she knows, having birthed children herself, that this is not just as seamless and as quick and simple and easy a fix as the abortion industry would have you believe. And as she has told Ginny, you know, if she really was a good mother, she would tell Ginny the truth about this, the fact that there's data which shows that if you're Ginny's age and you have an abortion, you're at a much higher risk of suicide or depression. That having the baby as a teenager, based on the study that was done in New Zealand, shows that actually those girls have a much lower risk than a woman that has an abortion at that same age. So, you know, maybe Ginny's mum, Georgia, doesn't know that data, but there's definitely well-known data about abortion regret. But there's no acknowledgement of that, no concern for Ginny in that way. Let's turn to the moment now where Ginny goes to the father of this child and tells him that she's pregnant.
I'm pregnant. I took a test and it was positive.
That's wild. Shit, sorry. I have to go. I promised my dad I'd pick up dinner on the way home. It's tacos, so... I'll text you.
So Ginny's incredulous. This is obviously a terrible response from the guy, but, you know, this is the clearest reason ever, the clearest clip ever that shows you why teenagers shouldn't be having sex. I mean, high school students just shouldn't be having sex because there's always the possibility of pregnancy if you have sex. You know, they market to children safe sex as if there is a foolproof way to make sure that you will not get pregnant, but there isn't, because we see unplanned pregnancies have continued to rise as the availability of contraception has continued to rise, and the rates of abortion have skyrocketed since the 1970s. So, you know, this is the clearest indication ever that if you don't want to be pregnant, don't have sex. And if you're in high school, it's clearly not the ideal time to have a baby, so you just shouldn't be having sex. You know, I tell my children, if you do get pregnant in high school, it's obviously not the thing that we want for you, but you can always tell mum and dad, and we'll always help you and we'll always support you and we'll raise that child together. Because that's the other thing that you do need to tell your children, because you can't control them. You can do your best to provide an environment where they're less likely to be having sex. You know, you can make sure that you've got a good relationship with them. You know what's going on in their life. You know where they are. You know, they're coming home from school in the train and they're meant to be home at this time. And, you know, you yourself are home and, you know, you spend time as a family. You support them in their giftedness. You help them develop their hobbies and interests. You can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, they have free will. And if they do unexpectedly get pregnant because they're having sex in high school, they need to know that you'll be there for them. And you make damn sure that you don't funnel them into that abortion.
Virginia Miller?
Yes.
Nice to meet you. I'm Dr. Taylor. How are you feeling today?
I don't really know how to feel.
Are you still deciding if you want to terminate your pregnancy? If so, we can talk through your options.
No. No, I've decided. Just scary.
You're going to be okay. First, we need to have an ultrasound to confirm that you're pregnant. So I need you to change into this gown, cover yourself with the sheet, and I'll be right back in. Warmed up the gel for your comfort. And you're just gonna feel some light pressure.
They would have tested Ginny's baby's heartbeat and they would have looked at the baby on the ultrasound to determine how old the baby was and to also check the placement of the baby, because Ginny's about to have a chemical abortion where she takes pills to kill her baby, and then she'll pass her baby, she'll deliver her baby at home. So they want to check that the baby's not in the fallopian tubes and this isn't an ectopic pregnancy. But throughout all of this, Ginny's looking to the side, and you notice here that, she just doesn't want to look at her baby, who even at this gestation, you'll see them moving and their hands and fingers beginning to form, their toes. I've seen my babies at this early age of 6-7 weeks, and you can see your child, and she just cannot even look. And it's worth mentioning that, when I was pregnant with my daughter Laura in Oxford, and I went to the ultrasound at 7 weeks and to confirm the pregnancy, and I was looking at her on the screen. I wasn't just looking at a picture, an image of a fetus. I was looking at Laura, and this is Laura today. You can see she's a thriving girl. And if I'd had an abortion at 7 weeks, I wouldn't have just killed a fetus. I would have killed Laura. And the thing is here, the whole case for abortion, the whole case for it requires us to look away. Because, if we look at that ultrasound before our abortion, or if we call it what it is, we just can't do it. The whole thing relies on BS euphemisms that lie to women and tell them that this is in their best interests. When it's clear from Ginny's face, she's scared, she's traumatized, she's sad. Her mum says, bring someone with you. If this was just like popping a Panadol or going for knee surgery, you wouldn't need all of that stuff. And it's because we know that this is traumatic because you're killing your own child, and it's something nobody should ever do.
I have a medication. You can take this one now. And you can take these 4 right away or anytime in the next 48 hours.
When does it start?
Cramping will start in about an hour.
This isn't a medication. Ginny's taking drugs that will chemically induce the death of her baby. They're chemical abortion pills. I described them at the beginning. There's no discussion here of any of the adverse side effects. Ginny says, when does it start? She doesn't even know that. I don't think anyone's even given her knowledge of what the potential side effects of these pills are, how they work, or when they even take effect. So how can you give informed consent to something if you don't even know how it works? A recent study showed that 1 in 10 women who take these pills will have severe adverse consequences. You have to be within 2 hours emergency access to a hospital in case you just start bleeding uncontrollably. And you need to be rushed to the emergency department. Women can hemorrhage from them. They can bleed out. So these are serious drugs. Ginny seems completely oblivious to any of this. But first and foremost and fundamentally, they're not a medication, because medication seeks to heal, it seeks to restore. This isn't that. This is killing her child.
Mom, do you think I did the right thing?
Do you?
Yeah.
Me too. And if anyone has a problem with that, they're going to have to go through me.
That's because he has.
I don't want you to feel any shame about this, okay? And I don't want you to hurt yourself.
This is what's presented as good motherhood here. Ginny saying to her mum, do you think I did the right thing? Looking to her mum for assurance. And then Georgia saying, yeah, damn right you did, and if anyone has a problem with it, they'll have to go through me. Like this is what is presented as strong motherhood, when in reality, nothing could be further from the truth. It shows you how messed up our culture is, that this is what strong motherhood is. Ginny is sitting there after taking these pills. And I should mention the fact that they don't show any of the actual cost of the abortion for her in those moments. It just literally is portrayed as a light period. Like she just has a hot water bottle and she's lying on the couch. And yet no woman I've ever spoken to that's taken these pills has described it in this way. And indeed, all of the accounts that I've read online, women say that they were not prepared for it. The amount of cramping and bleeding and pain and that feeling of absolute agony. And, even in other shows that have depicted this, like Heartbreak High, at least they show that that girl is so scared and in so much pain. She goes into that abortion thinking that she can turn up the next day for her debate to be school captain, and the debate is off. She cannot attend because she's in so much pain. Whereas Ginny just looks like, she stubbed her toe and she needs a whole water bottle for the pain. Like it just literally doesn't seem significant at all. So this is completely misleading young women. But the other part about this is it's just a complete validation of, whatever choice you make is the right choice, when, that's not good mothering, because good mothering is stewarding your children to make good moral choices that in the long term will be the things that uplift them and are the best for them. And so, even in studies of abortion regret, the abortion industry does try to say that this isn't a real thing, but there's overwhelming evidence to show that women experience abortion regret. And, Corinne H. Rocker's study, which was in Perspectives on Sexual and Reproductive Health, it's a study called Women's Emotions 1 Week After Receiving or Being Denied an Abortion in the US. So it's being written from a pro-abortion perspective, but even that study acknowledges that the main emotions felt by women who have an abortion are relief. So there's 37%, and I'm sure Ginny's feeling that. But then 20% are also experiencing sadness. And then among those who feel relief, even 39% of them still also feel some regret. So, I think that's the takeaway for me. Like, we portray an unplanned pregnancy as such a negative experience in our culture. We often portray motherhood now as such a negative experience. And so, of course, it's natural that there'd be some relief that you've managed to end something that's portrayed as such a negative. But even in this culture, women experience sadness and grief from this decision. And I think this study is talking literally just about the week after. But since doing this work, I've been inundated by women who've reached out to say, I had an abortion 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. This article that I'm going to put up on the screen was written by a woman in her 70s talking about the abortion she had in her youth. And you can see the pain and the trauma that they carry with them. The hashtag I can't stay silent is a hashtag for women who are not shouting their abortion. They're actually saying, I can't stay silent any longer. The abortion industry's bullying and intimidation. I can't stay silent. I killed my baby and it's the worst thing I ever did. And so, even the turnaway study shows this is women who were turned away from abortion. As a pro-abortion study, as I mentioned before. But 95% of women in that study who had been turned away from their abortion, at the 5-year mark, they say, I'm so glad that I had my baby. And that's not the experience that the data shows of women who had the abortion, women who've had their abortion over the long term. There's so much data now to talk about the tremendous regret that they feel about that.
Mom was really great today.
How you feeling?
I'm relieved. But I'm also kind of sad. I feel so stupid. I should have known better, especially with you and Mom. I just wanted to have fun. Forget about how terrible everything is. But I also forgot that I'm not allowed to have fun.
Ginny, no. That's not true.
I'm just glad it's over. Dad, should I feel guilty?
No way.
Am I damaged?
No, that's bullshit. No. You are perfect, you're wonderful, and nothing is gonna change that.
But if Mom did this, then I wouldn't be here.
That was her choice. You're a different person, and you did what was right for you. There's no guilt in that. You've been through so much, and you're only 16. You're just a baby.
I'm pretty tough.
No, you're my little gummy bear. Look, you shouldn't have to go through all this. You don't deserve any of it. Do you need anything?
No, I'm okay.
So again, this is portrayed as good fatherhood, just like Georgia funneling her woman into the abortion was portrayed as good motherhood. The reality here is Ginny's dad's been absent for most of her life. She has not had a present father in her life and to guide her. And once again, he's now in her life and he's failing in that obligation to steer her to make moral choices. And it's so incredible to watch because even though this episode is clearly pushing a pro-abortion agenda, which is what you get from Hollywood these days. But you can see that in Ginny's voice, like in the script even, there's this, should I be feeling guilty? Did I do something wrong? I'm scared. I'm sad. It's clear that even in the immediate aftermath, there is pain that she is experiencing, emotional pain. They don't show you the physical pain. They literally just whisk that away. It's completely whitewashed. But there is some emotional pain there. But then every time she turns to the two most important people in her life, they just validate the choice that she made. And they say, you're perfect. You shouldn't have to go through this. You're a baby. I've got you. When in reality, if they had turned to her at the beginning and said, we can help you, we can raise this baby. It's not ideal, but we can totally make the best out of this and it can be wonderful, And Ginny says, if Mum had done this to me, I wouldn't be here. She knows, because that is just the truth of it, that nobody can escape. Even the pro-abortion side cannot escape that. That if Georgia had aborted Ginny in the womb, she wouldn't be just aborting a fetus, she would be aborting Ginny. And, he says this is all going to be fine now. But he doesn't know that because, as I said before, all of the data shows that women go through tremendous mental distress and have lifelong problems of depression, suicide, suicidal ideation, all sorts of things. Like the mortality rate for women in that first year after an abortion is huge. It is a really significant thing to happen in Ginny's life. And unfortunately, you don't see any of that from this show, which is just part of the propaganda. So all of this to say, this is why what we're doing is so important. You know, this channel, this movement that we're building, if you haven't joined it, drjoannahowe.com.au/join, you can join our movement, you can follow on socials, subscribe to this channel and share this video, because if more people knew the truth about abortion, there would be far less abortion. Bernard Nathanson said if wombs had windows, we wouldn't be doing this. He was an abortionist that when he saw a baby on an ultrasound, once that technology was developed, he turned away from abortion. Now we just don't look. We just don't look. And so that's why this is so important to get the truth out there. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Dr. Jo Show.